probably tell by the video title. We will be jumping back into the world of Bourne with Bourne Betrayal by Eric von Lustbader. I know it's been a while since I have covered any of the Bourne books, so if you guys want to recap on the series and my general thoughts on all the other books, I have a playlist. I will link everything in the card. You guys can go rewatch those past videos if you want to, and just refamiliarize yourself with where we are in the series. This is going to be another more rambling type of video, just talking about my general thoughts on the book itself and the Bourne series overall. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. This book begins shortly after the death of Marie, Jason/David's wife. Now that Marie is dead, David Webb's identity has kind of receded into the background, and it's largely just Jason Bourne in the forefront of their mind. And this kind of brings up a couple of interesting questions that the book tries to answer and that I really appreciate, and I will talk about those a little later in the video. But with the death of Marie, Jason starts having flashbacks to another previous mission, and he seeks kind of help to understand why this is happening and what's going on. He doesn't realize that this is a part of a larger plot that is connected to the memories that he's having. Along with that, his friend Martin Lindros is tracking down a terrorist network in hopes of stopping a plan that they have to attack the United States with a nuclear bomb. But what Martin and Jason don't realize is all of this is interconnected, and the threat they are facing is a lot closer than any of them actually realized it was. So Jason must try and rescue Lindros from the group that is planning this attack on the United States. While he's doing that, he has to untangle this elaborate web that this group has set up in order to stop Bourne and seek vengeance on him for this previous mission that he's having flashbacks from. One of the big things von Lustbader does in this book differently than the other books is the tone. The other Bourne books that were written by Ludlum was more character study type thing. Von Lustbader's book, particularly in this one, is more of classic action spy thriller type book. Not that Ludlum's books weren't like that, but it's more in your face with von Lustbader's books, where we have Jason on a motorcycle chase. It's a lot more traditional spy book, particularly with the threat that Jason has to face in this book, as well as a lot of the action scenes are things you would see in your typical spy thriller book. So that's one of the big changes von Lustbader does for this book. He more embraces the more action spy side of the Bourne series. It's very well written, I'm not saying it isn't, but it's definitely a bigger change from the two authors. What this book does pretty well is actually combine two sorts of threats. In Ludlum's books, you had a lot more threats that were based on Jason's past missions. They weren't as obvious. You think of like Carlos and all those guys. They were singular threats. Whereas with this one, it's a whole network of people who want to complete an attack on the US. But I think this book does a good job at kind of combining, because the main threat is a part of Jason's past, and we get a lot of details of one particular mission that begin the threat that Jason is facing in this book. And I think this book does a good job at combining the two sorts of threats. It meshes very well. The threat in this one is still personal, but very visible, and I think it works to the book's advantage. Another big thing that this book does really well is we see a different type of Bourne, because with the David Webb personality largely being suppressed now that Marie's dead and David Webb kind of fades into the background, Jason Bourne's personality basically takes over for a large part as dominant personality. We see a very different Jason, because now that he's out, he starts to kind of question who he is as a person if Webb's not in the background constantly. Jason Bourne is pretty much on his own, and it's a really cool idea because now we get to see who Bourne is as an individual and not as like part of the Jason Bourne David Webb duo like he was in the past. And I think von Lustbader does a really good job at allowing us to empathize with Bourne as a man who has no past that he can remember and is now kind of adrift, and he has to find himself. and this book really does a good job at getting us into Jason's head of this like existential question of who I am if I can't remember who I was type of thing, and this book does a really good job at that. It's a really cool version of Bourne that we're seeing in this book. Another thing this book does very well is a really big focus on side characters. Whereas Ludlum's books were largely just contained to Jason and his story, and also Marie for small parts of this book, Von Lustbader expands the cast of Bourne series pretty expansively with the introduction of Martin Lindros, Veronica Hart, Soraya Moore, Tyrone, and a bunch of other side characters that are very well written. They're not one and done characters. They're characters that stick around and that are really likable and very well written, and we get to see even their own stories, particularly with Veronica Hart and Soraya Moore. Those two have their own storyline with Bourne, but also their own storylines kind of contained within themselves, which I really enjoy. And the side characters, I think, add a lot to Bourne's universe as it expands the cast, obviously, and it gives us more characters to relate to and for Bourne to kind of bounce off of. Particularly with Lindros, this book really goes out of its way to show the trust that Martin and Bourne have. So I really do enjoy a lot of the side characters that this book introduced and had us follow throughout the story. So overall, I do think Von Lustbader is doing a great job with these books of continuing what made Bourne super interesting in the first place, but also putting his own spin on the series. And yeah, I really did enjoy the Bourne Betrayal as another entry in the Bourne series. Cannot commend Von Lustbader enough for continuing the series and really honoring Robert Ludlum's legacy as he continues to write these books. I'm going to give Eric Von Lustbader's The Bourne Betrayal a 8 out of 10. Okay, so as always, if you guys have read any of the Bourne books or Bourne Betrayal in particular, leave your thoughts on the book down in the comments. I would love to discuss the series and this book in particular. Also, down in the comments, if you guys have books you want me to check out at some point in the future, leave those down there and I'll try and get to them. As always, my accounts will be linked in the description. Instagram, TikTok, and Discord are all RM book reviews. I will have all those linked in the description if you guys want to go and check those out. I have a lot of cool content on my TikTok that is not on my Instagram. Okay guys, that is going to be it for me for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, continue watching the channel. I will be back pretty soon with another video. Till then, have a great weekend, and don't forget, keep on reading.